Today is Monday, January 15th, and I'm just wondering what Cowboy fans will be doing next weekend. Embarrassing. That's one word to describe the 48-30. I'll start again from the top. Embarrassing. That's one word to describe the 30. Come on, Norm. Embarrassing. That's one word to describe the 48-32 beating the Cowboys got at the hands of Green Bay on Sunday. Shocking. Disturbing. You can use any ing word you want. That was awful. The postseason arrived, and Dallas again disappeared like rain on sand. And the description of the game is simple. They got their ass kicked by the youngest team to make the playoffs in the NFL in 50 years. This was going to be the Cowboy team. The number one offense in the league. A terrific defense. And special teamers with Pro Bowlers everywhere. Now, all those honors, all those accolades, put them all together, along with a couple of $100, and you can get a poor seat into some NFL playoff game next week. Where does the blame go here? Well, that's pretty easy to dissect. So let's do it. As someone we're all familiar with would say, here we go. Let's start with that quarterback. He was pathetic. He was awful. He was off target, behind receivers, bad reads, threw a pick six. Hey, don't look at the box score. Don't look at all those garbage yards he accumulated in the late going of that game. He threw for 403 yards, and it may be the single worst 403-yard performance in the history of the National Football League. Dak Prescott was terrible. CeeDee Lamb, yes, he had 110 yards receiving. Most of them in garbage time. CeeDee Lamb had virtually no effect on the first 3 quarters of that football game. Let's go to Coach McCarthy. Was this club prepared? Was it motivated? Did it look like it was really engaged mentally to begin the game? Hey, I don't know the answers to those questions, but they're easy to ask when Green Bay comes out and just goes up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down the field constantly. Dallas put up very, very, very little defense in this football game. Wait a minute. I want to pick it up there. I'm going to start with Coach McCarthy again, Tim. Let's go on to Coach McCarthy. Did this team look prepared to you? They looked befuddled all day by the defense of the Packers. And we'll get to the defense of the Cowboys in a minute. But it's easy to ask questions like, were they motivated? What happened to the offense? And those questions should be asked. This offense pulled a no-show. Forget the final 32 points. This team went into the fourth quarter having scored 16 points. That Texas Coast offense, it's nice, except when somebody else figures it out. And the Cowboys continue throwing 5-yard passes. Dump pass after dump pass after dump pass. And when you're behind, that chews up the clock. This club doesn't have a real big play offense. But what offense in the league is prepared when you fall behind by 27 points. This club averaged 37 points per game at home. But the Washington blowout masked a problem the Cowboys had that we pointed out Friday in our preview of the game. In the 3 games before Washington against playoff teams, Dallas scored 20, 19, and 10. And on Sunday, they had scored 16 when they entered the fourth quarter down 32 points. Okay, now let's get over to Dan Quinn's defense. It was crap. Total crap. The wide receivers and some of the tight ends were open all day. All day. How many plays were there that you said, who was supposed to cover him? This was the most points Dallas ever allowed in a playoff game in the history of the franchise. How bad was this defense? They allowed 7.7 yards per play. That's right. Green Bay got nearly 8 yards every time they snapped the ball, and realized that for the good part of the fourth quarter, they were doing nothing but running straight ahead 2 and 3 yard plays. For the first 3 quarters, they must have been at about 10 yards per play. Yikes. They allowed 143 rushing yards, 118 of them to Cowboy killer Aaron Jones. Love, the quarterback, he had a perfect passer rating. That's right. A perfect passer rating. He's the first rookie quarterback debuting in the postseason to ever have a perfect passer rating. And then there's 151 yards allowed receiving to Romeo Doubs. For most of the day, the Cowboys secondary was saying, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? No turnovers. The Cowboys forced no turnovers. They got no sacks. They allowed 6 touchdowns. If Green Bay had needed to score 60 points in this game, they would have. The Cowboys looked like dung. And the morning, no. And this morning, Cowboy fans thought they'd be talking about next week's opponent. Instead, the questions are, is Coach McCarthy going to keep his job? Has this dreadful performance by the defense cost Dan Quinn a shot at being a head coach someplace else? And of all those free agents, the Cowboys have tons of them. Who do they keep? Who do they draft? Do they still give Dak that big, long-term, big money extension? The last time the Cowboys made it to the NFC Championship game was 1995. Only 2 teams in the NFC have had a longer drought, Detroit and Washington. And Detroit could well make it this year. This has left Cowboy Nation shocked, disgusted, frustrated, and probably many of them drunk. But there is the biggest question of all that revolves around the Cowboys' number 1 fan, WWJD. What will Jerry do?